What's up, preppers? Welcome back to another video. We are talking about fallout, what it is and how it can affect us, and maybe dispelling a few of the myths that surround it. Now, fallout, as we're talking about it, is radiation particles pulled up by a nuclear blast and spread out into the atmosphere, dropping on us, falling like rain, etc., and just in the air in general. So that's the immediate thing. Just wanted to tell you so you don't think it's a review on the TV series or it's a review about video games. We're talking about the scientific side of things. So, now it's come up a few times that after some sort of nuclear attack, the country wouldn't be worth living in, blah blah blah, and all of this, based around things like Chernobyl. Now, Chernobyl was a meltdown. What we're talking about is a blast. Two very different things with similar immediate effects and not so similar long-term effects. A nuclear bomb is an explosive. It's got an immediate effect, an immediate blast, which creates an intense burst of prompt radiation, mainly gamma rays and neutrons, and of course the shockwave, followed by fallout, which is the radioactive material that can be carried by the wind and weather. Whereas a meltdown is usually something like an accidental overheating of a nuclear reactor, causing the fuel rods to melt. There's no explosion like a bomb, and the release is slower and more localized, though still very dangerous, as we've seen. Radiation leaks out gradually or in bursts due to containment failure. Now, it's also the types of radiation that makes these different. So the types of radiation from a nuclear bomb emits high energy gamma rays and neutrons, which is prompt radiation, which is immediate and short-lived. And the fallout contains short-lived isotopes like iodine-131 and long-lived ones like cesium-137 and strontium-90. A nuclear meltdown mostly releases fission products from fuel rods. More persistent long-term contamination with isotopes like cesium-137 and strontium-90, and less prompt neutron and gamma radiation compared to a bomb. So in summary, the energy release from a nuclear bomb is instant and massive. From a nuclear meltdown is gradual and localized. The radiation type is prompt from a nuclear bomb with fallout, and long-term fission products from a meltdown. The spread of the radiation is wide via the blast and via fallout through a bomb, and localized unless a catastrophic failure through a meltdown. Now, when we talk about the nuclear bombs, there's two different types as well. Of where they're detonated. You have the airburst nuclear weapon and of course a ground burst. With an airburst, you're not going to get fallout. It's the ground burst that's going to give you fallout, because the ground burst picks up huge amounts of earth and particles, radiates them, and then they fall back to earth, and that is what we call fallout. Whereas with the airburst, you're still going to get the gamma and neutrons blast initially, but it's not picking up any of that earth to then spread out as fallout. So with an airburst, obviously you've got the EMP effects and things like that, but you're not going to have the fallout. Now, the airburst and the ground burst both have prompt radiation, which we talked about with the gamma and the neutrons, which pretty much, if you're in that blast zone, is going to kill you and cause severe radiation sickness. Both of them have a thermal radiation, which is instantaneous with the blast. The type of that is, of course, infrared radiation, which is heat. Of course, severe burns, burnt to death, turned to ash, and the actual blinding from the flash are the effects of that. Now, the residual radiation is the third part, and that is where they differ. So you get minimal fallout with an airburst. You will get very small particles still that are then lifted up into the upper atmosphere and may settle globally over days and weeks. Some higher yield nuclear detonations, even as an airburst, could still cause fallout for a few days afterwards, due to the amount of particles that's produced or taken out just from the air. And the ground burst, of course, that's where the fallout for the residual radiation comes in, picks up all that earth, spreads it around, and it can spread with winds hundreds of miles. It could literally spread across a continent, a country, a continent, anywhere within the clouds, within the atmosphere. It can be picked up and spread all over this. Fallout clouds are probably one of the biggest effects that we'll see if there was ground bursts anywhere in Europe. The last part of the types of radiation, of course, is induced radiation. Now, this is after the explosion, and any materials that have been made radioactive by the neutrons, it could be earth, metals, buildings, anything like that, will emit a level of radiation. And of course, it's typically localized around the ground zero, the impact point, and can be a big effect ongoing for any first responders or anyone coming to the scene after the fact. Now, there's two types of fallout as well. There's local fallout and there's global fallout. Local fallout occurs within hours close to the initial impact point. And this is the most dangerous due to the high level of radiation and often involves heavier particles that fall quickly. Now, global fallout, because of lighter particles, radioactive particles, can go up into the atmosphere and they can be there for months, if not years. They can circle the globe and affect regions far from the impact site. Much less concentrated, of course, but still can be hazardous over time. So what can fallout do to us? Well, short term, we're looking at radiation sickness, which is nausea, vomiting, fatigue, hair loss, and, of course, burns. Acute radiation syndrome, or ARS, can be fatal depending on the level of exposure. Long term, we have the risk of cancer, especially thyroid and bone cancers. Genetic mutations can affect future generations. And of course, the environmental contamination of soil, water, and agriculture. So to put this in perspective and real-world terms that you might understand, Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, these were essentially where the bombs would be used. There'll be minimal fallout due to airbursts. Chernobyl in 1986 was a massive fallout across Europe after a reactor explosion, so a catastrophic failure. And then Fukushima in 2011 was localized fallout from a reactor meltdown. So that is not so widespread, not kicking up loads of fallout or anything like that. Obviously, some sort of fallout shelter would be awesome and we'd all love to have one. But if we can't do that, then what can we do? What we're looking at is surviving and protecting against the fallout, the after effects of any sort of nuclear detonation, be that a meltdown, be that a catastrophic failure somewhere, or be that a nuclear weapon. Fallout shelters and on any underground constructions, basements, cellars, obviously would be the number one choice. But the general rule, as mentioned by Hawkins on the Fireside recently, is time, distance, and shielding. Time, of course, is limiting any sort of duration, if any, that you're exposed. Distance is staying as far away from actual fallout as you can, be that centralized room in your house without any windows, or just as central as you can, be that in a basement or something like that. And shielding. We talk about concrete and lead being obviously the optimum, but any sort of shielding, any sort of mass between you and where the fallout or the actual fallout is going to help. And of course, potassium iodide. You might have heard many preppers talk about this in the past, but they are to flood your thyroid and protect from radioactive iodine. But who should take them? People living close to a nuclear event, and why I say close, within 10 to 50 miles of a nuclear event. Children and infants, including unborn babies via the pregnant mothers, as they are at most at risk for thyroid cancer from radioactive iodine. Young adults all the way up until the age of 40 are still considered a moderate risk, so should still consider them at that point. Pregnant and breastfeeding women under medical guidance to protect both mother and baby. However, If you're not inside that zone, don't take them. You don't need them. Now, if you're an adult over 40, unfortunately, like me now, the general advice is you are at lower risk of thyroid cancer, but higher risk from the side effects from the tablets. So the general advice is not to. And of course, you can have iodine allergies, so these things need to be checked. It's important to note that these are not magic pills. They only protect the thyroid, not other parts of your body for other forms of cancer. Timing is critical. They should only be taken a few hours before or after exposure. And of course, taking them without need, there's side effects involved with that as well. Okay, so let's talk timelines. When's it safe to go back outside and start going back to work after some sort of event? Well, in the first 0 to 24 hours, that's a complete non-starter. You need to take shelter immediately, seal windows and doors, and stay inside for at least 24 hours. Do not leave the safe area or the sheltered space or that central location of your house within that first 24 hours at least. Radiation drops rapidly after 24 hours, up to 80% reduction. And 1 to 14 days, up to 2 weeks, we still are at high risk of radiation sickness, or ARS, which causes nausea, vomiting, fatigue, burns, and potentially death as well. And remember, the fallout, not just staying away from you, it can contaminate food, water, and any surfaces. You should decontaminate anything that potentially has been exposed to this. Avoid any contaminated food and water. Don't run off your tap. If you don't know where it's coming from, use bottled water, especially within this first 2 weeks. And of course, stay informed, monitor the radio and any stations that are still going if you can find out any further information. Because although you are now protecting yourself against the effects of event A, that doesn't mean events B and C are not happening somewhere else nearby or about to happen. And of course, we know the long-term effects with the cancer and things like that. And if it is everything's restored and we're back to some sort of normality, that's where doctors, health screenings, hospitals, etc. would come in. With radiation and how long it is before you can go out, the 7-10 rule of radiation decay is what comes into play. So for every 7-fold increase in time after a nuclear explosion, the radiation dose rate decreases by a factor of 10. Got a radiation rating instantly after an hour of 1,000 roentgens per hour, then by 7 hours that'll be down to 100. After 49 hours or 2 days thereabouts, it's down to 10. After 14 days, that's down to 1. And then if you're lucky enough to be able to last 100 days, that's down to 0.1. But after the 48 hours with protection, taking safety measures, you could technically, if your plan was you had to get out of there, if there was another strike incoming to your area and you had to bug out, that point you could move if necessary. If that's not an immediate risk, then the 2 weeks minimum is what I'd be waiting, and every day extra you can hold out for longer than that, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, the better, and going to give you less exposure to any potential leftover or residual radiation that's out there. Now, the 7-10 rule is not an exact science, okay, but it's just a general rule guidance, which means people, anyone doing emergency services, first responders, have some sort of idea of roughly how long things take and how long before it becomes safe. And just remember, with this kind of thing, it's mostly short-lived isotopes that decay very quickly within that first 48 hours. So when you think of places like Chernobyl that could be uninhabitable for X amount of years, that's a completely different scenario. So with this, with any sort of nuclear conflict, any sort of blast, we're looking 48 hours, do not leave that safe spot. After that, 14 days within the home, within the area, if you can, sealed everything off, staying safe as central as you possibly can. And then so on and so forth, the longer you can last, the less radiation is going to be out there. So them radiation levels at 1,000, it's just lethal. Okay, level 5 rodents, I think I'm saying that right, rodents, is the maximum yearly occupational exposure for radiation workers in many countries. So that's the recommended the most. If you're 400 to 500, that's a whole body dose, meaning it would kill 50% of exposed people within 30 days without any sort of medical treatment. Just beware of this. If you're not ready for this and you do get exposed to this, this isn't something quick and that's it. This is long, slow, sickly and painful. And I'm not trying to scare you there, just trying to keep you in that safe area and make sure you're safe as possibly can till it drops. But once it drops to that level 1, which was after the 14 days, thereabouts, give it 15, 16 just in case, that's perfectly fine. And it's about length of time of exposure as well. So it's not you step out and you're instantly got a dose of 1,000 rodents. It's in 15 minutes you might have had 250. Yeah, in about 30 minutes that'll be about 500. That's a 50% chance of death. After an hour, that's 1,000. That's almost certain death. So completely minimal to no exposure. If you happen to be caught getting in somewhere, clean off, decontaminate, do everything you can. But it is a time scale based thing. Even after them 14 days, if you have to go out, you want to be covering up. You still want to limit your exposure. Ideally, you want to be not in any sort of contact with it for anything more than an hour, and only for emergency cases. If you can wait for that 100 days or that 90 days, something like that, then you're all right to be out there, no problems. Once it's past that point, then you're out, okay and out there. But at 1 hour per hour, you really don't want to be risking it if you don't have to. But if you have to bug out, if you have to go and scavenge, cover yourself up, take necessary precautions. You never want to inhale anything in that situation. So that's about it. I mainly wanted to dispel any myths about if there's some sort of incident and there's fallout, then we won't be able to live here for 10,000 years, etc. This is different kind of case scenarios. This is something you can prepare for. This is something you are preparing for if you have that core of prepper items, food, water, shelter, etc. And you can identify that safe space in your house. Now, you might not have a room that doesn't have any windows, like the one I'm in at the moment, but you might have a landing at the top of the stairs where you can close all the doors and you've got enough space between the roof and that's lined and that's got stuff in as well. Then that could be a place under the stairs in a similar sort of situation. If you're in a room where there is a window and there's nothing you can do about that, then you want to be looking at blocking that up with anything you can. Even something like a barrel of your food or any sort of liquid or anything like that. Anything you can put mass between you and where the fallout potentially is coming through is going to be good. Solid earth and obviously concrete and stuff like that is better, but the more stuff you can put to block that window, that area, then the better, and stay central to your house as long as possible. It's good to think about these things and have some sort of fallout plan in place. I'm fully aware that many people do not want to prep for if there was an immediate nuclear attack where they are, because they think they're going to be just toast in the blast zone, etc. That's fine. I respect your choices for that. If you are interested in still prepping even of that, then look out for early warning signs, bug out locations, bug out routes, how quickly you could get away from said location, and potential underground areas. Subterranean UK, if you just Google that, you'll see where shelters, where basements and things like that could potentially be. That's entirely your choice. Don't forget, prepping is very personal to you. If you're never wanting to prep for this, you're not wanting to survive after something like this, that's your personal choice. But remember, fallout can drift from overseas. We might not be the victims of a direct strike, but being prepared for fallout is still something we should strongly consider as preppers, just in case we have them travel over with the weather over, you know, in some sort of big cloud of fallout. Loads of stuff you can research and find more details online, but I hope I've either opened your eyes or helped you out a little bit, put some sort of plan in place. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for more content, and I'll see you in another video really soon. Goodbye.